you want to make your voice heard, we all do. A huge part of living in a democracy is letting our elected officials know how we feel about certain issues, both in and out of the voting booth. And a powerful way of raising our voices is by attending protests and other public demonstrations about the issues we care most about.
One way protesters express their opinions is through making protest signs. If you want to attend a demonstration, you might be thinking about making your own. But what's the best way to do it?
Hi, I'm Zan, the teen librarian from the Brooklyn branch of the Enoch Pratt Free Library. Today I'm going to be talking about protest signs of the past and present and how to make your own.
A history of modern protest signs.
Before we start, let's talk about some iconic modern protest signs and what you can learn from them.
The info and examples I'm using are from Bonnie Siegler's book Signs of Resistance, which is an overview of how protest signs were used in major social movements throughout American history. You can find this book through Pratt's Hoopla subscription, which can be found on the EPFL website under Books and More. While protest images and signs have been a part of American history since the Revolutionary War, the style we think of as the modern protest sign seems to have taken shape in the Civil Rights era. For instance, these signs carried by African American sanitation workers during a 1968 strike in Memphis use a simple but powerful message which references a famous abolitionist movement quote, "Am I not a man and brother?" But the signs turn this question into a strong assertion, "I am a man." The sign's bold design and simple message made it iconic, and the large crowd of people carrying these identical signs added impact to the message by showing strength in numbers. Later, the movement against the Vietnam War took an approach that incorporated emotional appeals and repurposing of patriotic images to spread their anti-war message. For instance, this anti-war poster from 1968 by Ron and Karen Bowen uses a familiar patriotic image, soldiers raising the American flag at Iwo Jima during World War II, and alters it so the soldiers are instead raising a flower, a symbol of peace. Another 1968 poster by Lorraine Art Schneider uses a simple but emotional phrase, "War is not healthy for children and other living things," to deliver an anti-war message. The image started as a picket sign, then was turned into a protest card sent to members of Congress on Mother's Day. It became a famous image still used by anti-war movements. In the 1980s, a growing movement began to demand the government act on the AIDS epidemic that was ravaging the LGBTQ community and many others. The movement pulled no punches. This stark image created by activist group ACT UP takes a historical symbol, a pink triangle used to identify gay men in Nazi concentration camps, and literally turns it upside down. The short but powerful phrase below it, "Silence equals death," followed by a smaller, longer message criticizing official silence about the AIDS epidemic, is a call to action for victims and their allies. A simple, colorful 1989 poster from artist Keith Haring, who was diagnosed with AIDS the year before, pairs the famous "Silence equals death" message with another, "Ignorance equals fear." Uses human figures making the familiar "see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil" poses to criticize public ignorance about AIDS. Most recently, we've seen a number of powerful signs, chants, and other imagery used in the Black Lives Matter protests, which arose in response to police brutality against people of color. "I Can't Breathe," the last words of Eric Garner, an African-American victim of police violence in New York City, have been used by multiple activists in the Black Lives Matter movement to protest police brutality. These words have been used not just on protest signs, but in other ways as well. Here we see a protester has written "I can't breathe" on a piece of duct tape, which she placed over her mouth.
While your sign might be different in a lot of ways from the ones I've just shown you, they're good to keep in mind when designing your own protest sign.
Sign making tips.
Now that you've seen a few great protest signs, let's talk about how to make your own. I'll be using a couple signs I've made as examples.
Creating your message.
Before you start actually making your sign, it's a good idea to know what your message is going to be. What do you care about? What do you want to say? I can't answer those questions for you, but I can give you some tips to keep in mind while you come up with your sign's message.
Keep it simple.
Short, simple messages are more powerful and easy to read. Think of the "I'm a man" and "Silence equals death" posters we talked about earlier. Their simplicity gives them greater impact.
Be clear and direct.
This will make your message easier to understand. Black Lives Matter is a great example of a clear and direct message, and it's simple too.
Use humor.
A funny message can help get your idea across, but make sure it fits the tone of the event that you're going to first. Bring a funny sign to a vigil, for instance, is not a good idea.
Here's an example. I made this sign for a Pride parade last year. Since I'm a librarian, I thought it would be funny to reference the shushing librarian stereotype and turn it around to say that society can't shush or silence LGBTQ librarians. This worked for the event because that Pride parade had a sort of playful vibe. Borrow from history and pop culture.
Another thing you can do is use a quote from a famous person or reference to pop culture. This can help your message resonate with people familiar with the source and help condense a complex idea into a shorter phrase.
For example, if you made a sign comparing an issue to something like the Hunger Games, then everyone who knows the Hunger Games will get what you're saying right away. But on the flip side, this sign might not make sense to someone who's never read or seen the Hunger Games. So this won't always work well, but it's a good place to start if you're having trouble coming up with a message. Designing your sign.
Now that you've got your message, you should think about what your sign will look like. It's good to have at least some idea of what your design will be before you get your materials, because this will affect what stuff you get. Here's a few things to keep in mind.
Color and contrast.
Make sure your letters contrast with or stand out from your sign's background. This will make the letters much easier to see and read. Black letters on a white background are a good example. Be careful with how you use colors in your design. While a lot of bright colors can get people's attention, they can also make your sign harder to read if the color doesn't contrast with the background.
For example, on this sign I put the words queer, trans, young, and old in front of the words Black Lives Matter in a few different colors. This made them stand out from both the white background and the black letters I used for Black Lives Matter. When I first laid out the sign, I wanted to use the color yellow for one of these words, but it was too hard to read against the white background, so I used other colors instead. Lettering.
You should make your letters big, thick, and well spaced so your message is easy to read. It's tempting to just use one thin marker line for your letters, but this will be hard to read from even a few feet away. It's also a good idea to sketch or lay out your letters on your sign ahead of time so that they're the right size and don't run together. That way, you don't end up with something like this.
Images.
Images for your sign, such as symbols or pictures, should also contrast with your sign's background so that they're easier to see. Try to keep these pictures simple too, so even people far away can see what they are. Make sure your images support your message. You don't want to confuse people.
The image I used on this sign, which shows a rainbow fist rising out of a book and breaking a chain, was adapted from a piece of clip art on my computer. I printed it out in a large size and used it on my sign because it's easy to see and supports my message. Good sign materials.
Now let's talk about what materials are best for making your protest sign.
Sign base.
Just about anything can be used as a sign base if you can write on it, but try to avoid using paper because it's too flimsy to stand up on its own. Foam board is one of the best materials you can use as a sign base because it's sturdy and light enough that you can carry it around for a long time without getting too tired. But cardboard and poster board work too. You can usually find foam board and poster board in the school supply or craft sections of an office store, craft store, or big box store.
Writing and drawing supplies.
Again, you can use just about anything for this. Paint, pen, marker, but permanent marker is probably your best option for a simple sign. Be sure you use something that's waterproof when it dries, so nothing marked washable or water soluble, just in case there's a little rain at the demonstration. Also, be sure you grab a pencil to outline your letters and design before you use anything permanent.
Optional materials.
None of the things I'm about to list are required to make a protest sign, but they can help you out a lot. One is glue, to attach things like pictures and paper to your sign. Spray poster adhesive can cover a large area quickly, but in my experience, it has strong fumes and usually gets everywhere. It even stays sticky after it's dried, which can leave a lot of dirty splotches all over your sign. Glue sticks take longer, but they're much easier and better to use for smaller things. Something else you can use to make your sign are poster letters. You have to buy these, but personally, I think they're totally worth it, especially if you have trouble drawing out letters, like me. You can lay them out quickly and move them around pretty easily, and since they have Post-it sticky on the back, you can keep each one in place until you're ready to glue it down. They come in a lot of different sizes and colors too. Last, let's talk about handles, poles, and strings. These can all be used to make holding your sign easier during the protest, especially if it's a long one. But you should be careful what you use, because some materials are banned for protest signs in certain places, which I'll talk about in the next section.
Building your sign.
Again, making your sign is pretty simple. Just follow your design and take your time. But there are a few things you should know before you actually start making it.
Sign rules and restrictions.
You should also be aware of any rules or restrictions on protest signs in the city or place where your demonstration will be, or else your sign might get taken away. Check to see if the specific demonstration you're going to has their own rules about signs too.
For example, let's say you're going to a protest in Washington, D.C. Did you know you can't use a solid stick or pole to hold up your sign there? It's true. Because a solid pole could be used as a weapon, you should use a hollow cardboard tube as a sign handle instead. How to make a sign handle.
In my experience, hollow cardboard tubes that are long enough to work as sign handles can be hard to find. So, I came up with this solution to make an alternative. So all you really need to make this is a piece of poster board, scissors, and tape. Make sure the poster board is the kind that you can fold. What you're going to do is take it along the short side here, fold in just a little bit, and smoosh it down. See? Hardly folded it in at all. Next, what you should do is you fold again along the edge of the piece you just folded, and just do like that. So you fold it over again. And basically what you're going to do is keep doing that over and over until you've gone over the whole sheet. So I'll show you. Just keep folding as tight to that edge as you can. That's very important. Hold as tight to the edge as you can. You can see it got a little cattywampus there, but that's a matter because we're just rolling it up. Now what you do is you unfold the whole thing. Now, to unfold the whole thing, what you're going to do is refold it along the lines so it forms a triangular tube. So what you'll do is you see the first crease, second crease, third crease, take the edge of the paper and fold it in so it nestles into that third crease right there. And then you just sort of roll it like that. Again, keep it as tight as you can. And since we need to tape this down, let's just cut off the excess here. You can see it forms a triangle just like that. Now, it's unrolling itself, sorry. Let me measure out a piece of duct tape. You want it to be about the length of the tube. And so when you're doing this, do the duct tape first. Cut the duct tape first. And there we go. So it's rolled up very tight. Take the duct tape and then put it along the edge here to close the tube. Doesn't matter as much. You don't have to be perfect with this. It's just a sign handle. It's not your sign itself. Hardly anybody's going to notice it at all. Tape it along the edge there, just to hold it together. And there you go. You've got your sign handle. Right, so there you go. We have our sign handle now. All you'll do when you're done with the sign is tape it along the back. Like you'll put it perpendicular to the sign, you'll tape it along the back with some duct tape like that. If you want to make it more sturdy, you can make a second one, put it across the middle, up to you. But that's how I did mine.
Weight and weather.
There are two more things you should remember while making your sign: weight and weather. You should make your sign as lightweight as possible so that it's easy to hold and carry through the entire demonstration. Some of these events can last for several hours, and you'd be surprised how quickly your arms can get tired.
It's also very important to make sure your sign is reinforced so it won't get torn apart by the wind. This was something I forgot about when I made this sign, and it nearly got torn off its handle during the protest. What I should have done was made a second tube to go across the back of the sign horizontally and attached it to the top of the sign handle. This would have made the sign much more steady during the march.
And there you go. Now that you know a bit more about the history and construction of protest signs, you should be ready to make your own. And don't be afraid to make your voice heard. That's what democracy is all about.